Hey everyone, this is episode 3 of season 3 of the Beyond the X and O's podcast, brought to you by the Coaches Site, the #1 online resource for hockey coaches. This podcast is hosted by myself, Dr. Cassidy Preston, a mental performance coach and founder of CEP Mindset, and Piero, my former coach from my playing days where we won a championship together in junior, and he's now spent the past 30 plus years in the game of hockey from the NHL on down. And now we're working together in mental performance and leadership space. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing really well, Cass. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. Excited to get this episode out. Andrew Cogliano, unreal episode. But before we do, I think we want to address here Hockey Canada and all the news out there. There's a lot leadership ways of looking at this. Maybe you want to give us your take first and just a couple important things to, I think, everyone to reflect on here.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, this is about the game of hockey, and I think we have to understand that, and everybody in the constituents within the game, and from the kids to the coaches, volunteers across the country and whatnot. And it's unfortunate what's going on and what's playing out in the media, and I guess to kind of distill it really in terms of what's happening in some of the parliamentary hearings that are happening. I just wish people would do the right thing, and doing the right thing is being able to understand it's about the game and all it entails. And that's why we created this Beyond the X's and O's podcast. It's not just about coaching and leadership. It's about the game. It's beyond what we see on the ice, and it's how the game treats its people and how the game treats everybody involved, because it's such a beautiful and great game. And, there's a lot of great people in it. And, right now we're seeing the game being dragged through the mud because of this. So that's kind of disheartening, to be honest with you. It's disheartening.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm always the first to say, it's hard. It's not easy to be in a big leadership position, but with some of the things we were seeing, and it's the questions around accountability for everybody, and questions around what's best for the game and best for the people. And I'm not sitting here being like, oh, I've got all the solutions, because and we all know I don't have all the facts for sure. I'm not the most up to date in all the news, but I think, from what our conversations have been, and when we're looking at it, leadership and looking at doing what's right for the game is a huge part. And sometimes those things and behaviors can slip. And so I think there's a good, it's an important time for people to be looking at that and reflecting, and how can we continue to improve the leadership at that highest level. I know a couple other things we can touch on with that, but anything else you want to jump on there? I know you have a few other thoughts there.
Yeah, I to be honest with you, Cass, it's really for me, coaches, and we always ask our players to be accountable on the ice, accountable to their to what they do. But coaches need to be accountable. Everybody within the game needs to be accountable, not just to the players, but to themselves. And that's truly what I believe leadership is having that vulnerability to be accountable to yourself and to the people that you're serving with. And I think what we're seeing, at least what happened this week with the parliamentary hearings, and it's certainly, and we're taping this as we head into Thanksgiving weekend, and we have a lot to be grateful for and thankful for. But I think it's really the ability to recognize that, the doubling down and the protectionism that seems to have, occurred this week is really concerning to me, because again, it seems to be that seems to be an act of who you serve. I always ask from a leadership perspective, who do you serve? And it seems to be this doubling down and this protectionism that seems to have come through in these parliamentary hearings. It seems like the people in the upper echelons of Hockey Canada are serving themselves, and not the game. And I opened up this piece about the game. We need to serve the game, and I think that's where as long as we're guided by that, I think then that's how we can do the right thing, and how people can do the right thing, even if it's at the cost of our own personal interest. And that truly is what I believe leadership is. And that's why we talk about Beyond the X's and O's. And, you look at some of these corporations that have kind of pulled out of their sponsorship of the upcoming World Juniors and some of the other programs that go on. Obviously they're upset. So it's concerning. It's concerning. And I think it's important that we address it here.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think you talk about accountability. It's such an important concept. I know we might be doing an upcoming episode just focused on that, because it's the structures we set up, and even within minor hockey, and holding coaches accountable, and and at the higher levels. And so, everyone, it's important to self-reflect and look at that. And so I think we'll leave it at that unless there's anything else you want to touch on it. And we got a great guest. This might be one of my favorite episodes. It was a shorter one, but really insightful. So I'll let you tee it up. You know Cogs a little better than me, so I'll let you tee up this guest.
Well, before I get into the formal part of the intro, I mean, for me, it was a kind of a special opportunity to have Andrew Cogliano on, in the sense that, he played for a team that I coached as well before you came on board with the St. Michael's Buzzers, and won a championship with him as well in the Ontario Junior Hockey League as you did. So it was a great opportunity for me to sit with two former players of mine that won championships. But he's gone on to have a great career, and he spent 15 seasons in the NHL, playing over 1,140 games, of which he had a consecutive streak of 830 games. And he recently won the Stanley Cup with the Colorado Avalanche, which was pretty cool to see. And he'll talk about that today. But the team he was traded to at the deadline from the San Jose Sharks. He also went to the Stanley Cup Finals as a member of the Dallas Stars a couple years ago, when they had the NHL bubble. In addition to those teams, he's also logged time with the Anaheim Ducks and the Edmonton Oilers. And the Edmonton Oilers are the team who selected him in the first round out of the St. Michael's Buzzers junior program in the 2005 NHL Entry Draft. What I want to state about Andrew is, like, championships seem to just follow him around. As he's won internationally, representing Canada at the World Junior Tournament, winning 2 gold medals, as well as being on the U18 Canadian team that won gold, and representing Team Ontario, winning the gold medal at the U17 World Hockey Championship. And as I mentioned earlier, won an Ontario championship. He led the St. Michael's Buzzers to the Ontario Championship, was MVP of the league. He also went on, played a couple years at the University of Michigan before he turned pro. So he's had a storied career, long career. Happy for him on a personal level, but also professionally, that he was able to win the Stanley Cup this year. As you said, it was a great podcast, and his honesty about what transpired this year, and how it went through, was really refreshing. It's a great listen. It's a great listen.
Yeah, one of my favorite takeaways was just the simplicity in which he speaks, and so like his framework around his role, who he is, being a leader, his mindset even. He's pretty clear cut, and it's like, I've got my system. This is what I'm about. And he's not afraid to speak up too, which I think is key, because he kind of talked about, like, I generally just, keep my mouth shut, do my job. But then he's known, and we'll talk about this big game 5, between games 5 and 6, the speech, but he does speak up, and it's like, he speaks up for what's to serve others, to serve the team. And so it's some great, good, simple leadership behaviors, and he's had that. And we talked about it even when he was at the Buzzers, and there's a good clip of you guys talking about it within. So that was one of my favorites. It's just how he carries himself. I think is quite great. It's a great episode to share with athletes and getting them to hear. Even some of the athletes I'm working with, I'm like, I'm already telling them about the episode before it's out. So that was one of my big things. There's a bunch of other good takeaways. What are the ones that stand out to you before we dive in here?
Yeah, you know what? It's to dovetail what you just said. It's interesting because, like a lot of players that make the NHL, they were stars on their teams when they were younger, and they led their teams in scoring. And Andrew was one of those guys. But as he transformed into the National Hockey League, he recognized and realized what's going to keep him there, and he kind of had to change his idea of who he was as a player. And he had no problems doing so. So when you say what your commentary is so well taken, because it's a great way to kind of have that self kind of awareness to know what's going to keep him there. And that speaks to his character and his understanding of who he is. And as I said, 15 years now in the National Hockey League. I just love the stories he talked about, being able to, the culture of the Colorado Avalanche and how close they were as a group, and how that means something. And it's amazing how, championship cultures, regardless of sport or even, in business, like, high-end culture businesses are, there's a closeness there. There's a connection. There's a willingness to kind of go beyond, for your fellow worker, your fellow player, your fellow teammate, or whatever it may be. And he articulates that. And you mentioned the speech that, kind of seems to now have gotten this kind of a lot of notoriety in between Game 5 and 6, because he talked about how Game 5 was the Stanley Cup was in the building in Colorado, and they just kind of missed the mark. And then they obviously go to Tampa for Game 6, and he kind of spoke up. And that says something about, again, who he is from a character perspective, and put himself out there with really a new team. I know a team that he's gone to battle for a couple months, but it's good on him. Anyways, great episode. It was fun to catch up, and certainly, as we said, wish him and the Colorado Avalanche a great year this year.
Yeah. So we'll let the listeners dive in and enjoy it. Reminder, comment, like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And love to hear your comments or feedback at any time. So enjoy the episode.
The Coaches Site is hockey's leading online coaching resource and was created to provide hockey's top coaches, leaders, and performance experts with a platform to share their experience and insights with coaches and organizations of all levels, with the goal of enhancing the development opportunity for their players. A membership includes access to 500 hours of educational videos, a library of over 700 drills, articles breaking down the latest tactics and systems, and the opportunity to join a coaching community of over 15,000 coaches from around the world. Regardless of the level you coach, the Coaches Site is going to provide you the ultimate coaching toolkit. Listeners of the Beyond the X's and O's podcast can save 25% off an annual membership by using the code BEOutstanding when you register. Again, get registered today by using the code BEOutstanding at thecoachesite.com.
CEP Mindset provides mental performance coaching to elite athletes, teams, coaches, and business executives so they can achieve consistent elite performance. Our one-on-one coaching programs help elite athletes break through their mental blocks and take their game to the next level.
In addition, we offer team programs that help athletes improve their mental game and leadership skills. An important part of these programs is we work with you, the coach, to go beyond the X's and O's. We help you develop the human skills of leadership and become your listening partner. Just like athletes need coaches, so do coaches.
And at CEP Mindset, we don't just work in sport. We also work with high-performing business executives and professionals, especially those who relate to being an elite athlete and want a similar approach to optimizing their performance in work and life. Find out more at cepmindset.com.
All right. Well, thanks for another episode. Joining us for another episode of Beyond the X's and O's podcast. Today's guest, we have Andrew Cogliano. Andrew just coming off of a Stanley Cup championship run. So welcome, Cogs. It's great to have you. For me, this is great on the pod because I got you as a former player with the St. Michael's Buzzers on this, and then Cassidy Preston is a former St. Michael's Buzzer player. We all won championships, in terms of the OPJHL Provincial Championship and Tier 2 in Ontario. So anyways, thanks, Cogs, for joining us, and congrats on the Stanley Cup.
Yep. No, thanks for having me, guys.
And certainly appreciate, obviously, you're kind of obviously coming off this unbelievable run. Talk to us about that journey. Like, you're in San Jose, you get traded at the deadline, Colorado. Obviously, there's I'm sure there's an excitement in your end, but certainly tell us about that process in terms of what you went through.
Yeah. Obviously, as good as you could get, to be honest. I was in San Jose for half the year, and we won a playoff team, and that was kind of a tough scenario for me. I was fortunate to play in the playoffs for 10 years in a row, so being in that scenario wasn't ideal, wasn't really fun for me. But I caught a break in terms of having some teams interested at the deadline, and Colorado was one of them, and pushed my agent to get me there, and kept calling, and obviously they had a bunch of different things going on with players that they wanted to get, and I was a guy that they kind of got right at the end, and I had some relationships with guys on the team already there, so it kind of worked out. But no, just a dream scenario, really. It kind of worked out perfectly for myself, for the team, getting traded at that moment, and then being able to be on a team like we were and win a cup. So it was basically picture perfect, really.
How did you, in terms of that, going into that dressing room, they've got established, we'll say stars and leaders, but you're bringing this experience, over 1,000 games, experience, Stanley Cup final experience with Dallas into the mix. How do you not so much assert yourself, but how do you fit in? How does that go? Like, is it kind of like a feeling out process? How did it work out for you in that respect?
I was comfortable with a bunch of guys in the room already. I knew Nate. I knew players that I've had relationships before, so I thought that was fairly easy. And I just think that they were in a situation where they could have used some experience. I think that was maybe their downfall the year before and the couple years before that. I feel like they had a team that was really highly talented, but maybe didn't have a lot of specific role guys, and I thought that that's what they wanted to change this year around. They got me, they got Lehkonen from Montreal, who's a really good player, a really good, probably a really high-end role player, but Manson, who's another kind of strong, role player, and it seemed like that was what they wanted to do. They wanted to change kind of their mix and get some more experience and get some older guys, and so it was kind of, like I said, it was a match made in heaven in terms of what the team kind of needed and what I brought, and it worked out from my perspective and theirs.
Awesome. I want to delve into that St. Louis series. So, you've been through a lot in terms of obviously seeing different things in the game. You kind of sit there and McKinnon scores 3 goals and whatever, and you guys go up, but then in that one game, and then you lose the game. In terms of that, how do you rebound that? Like, is that like a seminal moment for you guys as a team to be able to say, okay, once you got over that hump, and how did that, what was the dressing room impact there? Was there anything that was done or said, or how did that go about?
Yeah, that was a tough series. And thinking back on it now and the whole run, that was probably the toughest series. I thought they were very, a little bit of an unassuming team, to be honest. I thought we probably outplayed them every game, but they kind of were, they've been a championship team. They have guys that have won championships, and they kind of hung around in a lot of the games, and were able to kind of keep finding a way to make things happen. So, that was, a tough loss. Nate scored 3 goals. The building was absolutely electric. And obviously you're thinking about moving on. And, for these guys on our team and for the organization, the second round has kind of been a little bit of a hurdle for them. It really was. So, I think after that game, I definitely think there were some nerves. I think there was, some wondering, but, I think we were just ready to make the step. And I think, that's maybe, I don't want to say I had a huge part of that, but in terms of, you bring new guys in that you didn't have that hurdle, maybe that rubbed off on some other guys. And I thought the big boys did a good job of kind of keeping us in the moment. And we played a really good game that game. We played a great game, and actually Helm scored the winning goal. So it was a perfect finish. We scored with 4 seconds left. It was kind of as perfect as you could get. So it was a good moment.
So Cass, I know you're dying to jump in. So I got to go back to that moment. You scored 4 seconds left, and I'll say this: when the camera panned to the bench, when that goal went in, and you were jumping up and down, and it's just the sheer joy, the excitement that you had on the bench there with your teammates. I just thought that to me is what hockey's about in terms of that. Like looking at that, like you're firing. Like I just thought that was awesome. I think that probably having that relief about being able to just kind of, okay, we're past the second round, we're on to the conference finals. That's got to feel good. Yeah, no, it was yeah. You can't really, at the end of the day, you think about playing and you think about the moments that mean anything, and those are the moments. Just having the complete. For us, that was a perfect moment. You scored with 4 seconds left. There's probably more of like a feeling of elation, really, that you don't have to go into overtime and to know the game is over. That's probably the biggest thing we took out of that. But, it's pure excitement, pure joy from the guys. And, that was a specific moment. That was probably one of the most specific moments of the run that I'll remember, just because the feeling was just amazing, knowing that, for me, I've been past the second round. I've been able to be in, conference finals. But I know for a lot of guys on that team, that was a big moment. Good.
I'll jump in here because I know, Chris, you'll be priming at Michigan, buzzers, gold medals, all this other, results and success you've had. But, I'm really interested in too, how you see yourself in the leadership role with Colorado there in that run, because I know there's lots of people have spoke about it, and, you kind of alluded to it a little bit already, but like being the new guy, have been around, how would you look at your role, especially through that playoff series, and like the little conversations or speaking up? And there's a few other questions out of that, but I just throw it to you that way, just because I think we're pretty interested to see it from your side of the lens here.
Yeah, you know what? I approached coming here to just, I wanted to approach it. I was just going to try to bring value wherever that was going to be. To be honest, I'm coming from from a non-playoff team. My vision was just to get on the team, to be honest. And I knew that I would be able to find myself a role. I knew I'd be able to connect with a lot of the players, and I knew I'd be a guy that guys would, gravitate towards and maybe follow in terms of tough times, because I've kind of had experience in those moments. So, my vision was just to bring value, if that was playing on the second line, if that was on the fourth line, or that was out of the lineup. That was kind of my idea. To me, last year was basically, before that, when you're playing on a non-playoff team, you don't really know where the career is going to go, maybe at that point, to be honest. I think those are just thoughts that you have going through your head. But when I got there, it was just, I was revitalized. So, that was my objective. But I thought I did a pretty good job of combining the guys on the team, to be honest. I think we have a really high-end talent group in terms of our top-end players, probably the most talented in the league, to be honest. And then I thought we had some younger guys and guys that would play in the bottom, 6 role, and maybe just wouldn't get the ice time as the other guys. And, at the end of the day, I think we needed a few guys in between, really. And I think I was one of those guys. I think Lehkonen was, Manson, that Sturm, the 4 guys that Joe brought in were kind of in-between guys that kind of gelled everyone together. And, I will say it's probably the tightest group of guys I played with. I think that's why we won. We were a very tight group, and we still are this year. And I think that adds a lot to the overall team.
Yeah, I think I love hearing that, Cox, because I know, obviously I've known you for a long, long time. And I guess with that, one of the things that I'm always amazed in talking about you is the fact that I think all you do is help teams win championships. And it's just kind of like a common theme that's gone through, the thread that you've had. And I think with that being said, is there, and there may not be, but is there in your mind any commonalities amongst championship teams that you have seen or that you can articulate about?
Yeah, I think, it's respect for everybody on the team. I think everyone, to have a winning team, and I bet you'll ask probably the best players on our team now, the guys that probably made the biggest difference were the guys that no one really expected to, and I think with any championship team, I think every role is really it's just vital to the team's success, and when teams don't win, I think that's when, they have maybe too many guys pulling in the one direction and not other guys in the other direction. And I think our team was the pinnacle for that. I think we had guys that knew their roles and did it to just, complete perfection. And I think you need that. I think for hockey, especially. I think championship teams need everybody. It's a cliche thing, but I think we proved that this year to ourselves, really. I think the guys in the room were proof in the pudding. And like I said, there was big moments that, when you think about some of the biggest ones, there were probably guys that weren't the best players, to be honest. So, those guys usually carry the mail and get the job done in the end. But, team atmosphere is the biggest thing that leads to winning, really.
Yeah, it's a funny thing because we ask this question a lot in terms of that, just trying to understand what that culture, championship culture is. And, how much of it's created, organizationally, how much of it, where does that come from? Like you say, from the management, where's it come? How much of it's from like the coaches and then the players, obviously. I'm sure it's a combination of all three of those and probably everybody else in between. Would you agree there?
Yeah. I think winning is, I think it comes down from everyone. I think our GM and Joe and, there's a confidence throughout the team that you could feel. I think there's a level of work ethic that, I think we're unmatched really when it comes down to that. When you look at some of the guys and what they do on a day-to-day basis, and now I think, I think we have a different team this year. But at the end of the day, I think there's still that idea of, hey, you do your job, we're going to be a good team, and now when you win, I think you find a new confidence. Really, I think now we're in a special moment where, we have confidence in ourselves now, and some of the moments we experienced this playoff run, I don't think you're going to find tougher, to be honest. So you could always draw back to that now.
Right.
Yes. I'll jump in just to maybe prime you to elaborate on some of like what you feel is your role in helping create that respect, pulling guys together. Like I think you talked about combining the talent and the youth. Like what were some of the ways, obviously tell us everything. Like that's kind of like it's, share what you're comfortable in a high level, but it's like, how would you describe that for, maybe other players listening or coaches encouraging their players to, how do we create those kind of that environment and culture and what you saw your role in doing that? Because obviously, seems like you can do a pretty good job of it. And a lot to speak to that.
I think for me, obviously I have the age and experience to help me. I think that's, a thing I have in my back pocket. So, but I'm not afraid to use my voice for, ultimately what I think is beneficial for the team to win. Really, my individual goals are, I might have them, but they're not that important, really. They're more about, everything I'm thinking about, everything that I'm helping, if it's Nate or Gabe, it's strictly what I think is purposeful and what I think, will help have the team win, really. So, I think everyone's in a different position. I think star players have a little bit of both. They have to really focus on their game because individually they need to be good for the team to win. But I think you need players that really all their mindset is what the team needs to do in order to win. And if you have guys kind of pulling in that direction, then decisions get made. Sometimes decisions maybe the best players don't want to happen. They're persuaded in the team fashion. So, and I thought that's what happened with our team. I really do. I think we had a combination of everything, and I think my voice and maybe my experience helped a lot of maybe younger guys or guys in lesser roles, stand a bit taller at times and follow a guy like me, knowing that, I've had the experience, and if I needed to speak up on their behalf, I would. So, I think that's my situation might be different than teams in general, but I think the more you guys you have that stand up for the team, I think when that comes together with the best players and what they do on a day-to-day basis, I think you get success.
So let me drill down there. Obviously your experience has got you to that point, like you say, your age, your experience, and that kind of stuff. When did you in your NHL career kind of cross that threshold to be able to say, yeah, you know what, I feel comfortable being able to step up and use that voice? Is there, again, like you say, younger guys may not necessarily have that. And that goes with any team at any level, I would suspect.
Yeah.
Junior, college, whatever. At what point in time did you say to yourself you felt more comfortable within your own skin, let's say, to be able to step up and start being vocal?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's different for everybody. I think some young guys have that presence to begin with. I was able to play on some really good teams in Anaheim and have some older guys, and then I think there's always a transition when the young guys turn into the older guys, really. And I think when that moment happens, I think everyone knows it in hockey, and that's when you kind of have to start kind of embracing that role. But it's important. I think hockey sometimes could be, guys just go about their business and just play, and they shut their mouths and they're told what to do. But I think the best teams that I've been on have been really close teams, very good people, character people that all they want to do is help each other. And I think when you're on teams like that, the guys that don't fit get weeded out pretty quickly. So, that was one thing I was impressed with this year. I thought we had not only a great team on the ice, but good people, and I think it adds a lot.
So I wanted to ask that question because you may not remember. I remember back in the day when I coached with the Buzzers, and there was a point in time we had a team meeting, and before the playoffs, in the dressing room, every player had a chance to talk about what they need to talk about. And then you stood up. You kind of said, "Hey, coach, can I talk?" And then you stood up and you talked to another player who might have been a little bit. It remains nameless, but there was a bit of a maybe some selfishness on that player, and you kind of addressed him in front of everybody and said, "Hey, we need to get along to be able to do the great things that we need to do." And it kind of set everybody's mood kind of at peace, because I think everybody kind of knew, something needed to kind of be said, and you stood up and said it. And then that just ended the meeting. And I thought it was, I remember it very vividly because I just thought, I say it because I think you've always had that voice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And as far back as whatever you were, 17, 18 at that time or whatever it was. And, we ended up winning the championship that year. And I thought there's other factors why we won, but I think that seminal moment was key in my mind in the dressing room prior to the playoffs.
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe it's my personality. I've been always a guy that's maybe a bit blunt and maybe outspoken in those ways. But I don't really remember that, to be honest. But
I didn't think you would. But that's okay. That's why I'm bringing it up.
But it reminds me of I after Game 5, I kind of. It was kind of a similar scenario, to be honest, of what happened this year. It was, it was a really tough game, to be honest. Game 5 was, winning the cup. It was Friday night in Denver, and you're basically going to the rink thinking you'd win the cup. And my personal mindset was, I wanted Nate McKinnon to score 3 goals and get the game over with, and that was it, right? But I think that was the problem. And I think after Game 5, that was, like I said, I don't think I'll ever, well, maybe I will, but I don't think I'll ever find a tougher moment. I don't think anybody on our team will, a tougher moment than that. Game 5, basically thinking you're going to win the cup in front of your home crowd and losing the game and having to go back to Tampa to try to win Game 6. So, I kind of, in my head, obviously didn't sleep at all that night and thought to myself, something needed to be addressed with the team, because you could feel that everyone was thinking the same thing, and I think everyone was thinking, that we were just hoping we won, really. And if it wasn't addressed before Game 6, it might have spilled over. And my head was, I asked Gabe and Nate to speak, and I basically said, at the end of the day, this is what I was thinking, and I know everyone was thinking the exact same thing. And it's funny, when you kind of get it out in the open, that's when other guys come forward, and a guy like Nate McKinnon says, yeah, I was hoping that I didn't even want to play the game, and that's just, it was just human nature, really, for all of us. We've never been in that scenario, but you could tell after the meeting, we were at the hotel, and after that, it was like we left the room and we knew we were going to win. To be honest, we just did. You could tell guys left that room with everything off their chest, and we played. The Game 6 was a game not only for winning, but it was the best game I've ever seen a team playing in a really high pressure situation.
And there you go. And then you getting it out in the open allowed for everybody just to kind of play to their capabilities to relax and play the game that they need to play. And obviously, you're saying it's the best game, and that talk is well documented, because I remember hearing Eric Johnson talk about that, on another podcast. I think it was Spit and Chicklets. He talked about the idea of your talk kind of gave everybody permission to win.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Which I think is a really cool way of putting it, right?
Yeah. So, and it worked out for me. At the end of the day, we won. If we didn't win, no one would remember it. But no, I think it really, that was probably the first time I actually kind of really had a conversation with the team. Like I think everything else was pretty smooth sailing till then. We lost 4 games all playoffs, right? So I think it was the first moment where guys actually heard me talk, and I think it really just let us accept where we were and basically have no regrets. I think you could have easily went into that game 6 hoping you won again, and then going back for game 7, and really that would be the last scenario we want to be in, right? So
yeah.
I love that, Andrew. I think just to maybe elaborate on a bit, it's like thinking about your ability, like that the vulnerability there. It's like you kind of assume probably other people are thinking the same thing. There's this elephant, but it's like, hey, let's address it. And and like, whatever reason or whatever how you develop that, and like, Dib said, like when you were younger, like you were doing that. Like, I'm going to address an issue, and you're doing it out of a place for the sake of the team too, which I think is, you've drilled that mentality. And a lot of the athletes we work with, like sometimes we have to cultivate that, because a lot of athletes kind of develop like a me attitude, which actually hurts them, because then you're not working well with your teammates, creating championship cultures, which is better for the athlete in itself. So I was really happy you shared that and how you shared it. One of the funny things about it as well is like, it's kind of like you're at near the finish line. It's like happens a lot with golfers. And it's like, you're like, don't run through the finish line. You're thinking like, just like, what's it going to look like when we win? What's it like? And it's like, no, let's be where we are. And so it sounds like you did a really good conversation breakdown for the team that way.
Yeah, so. It was, for me, I had probably a lot more to lose than everyone else. This was, been in the league for 15 years. I literally could see the Stanley Cup, and I thought in my head, first of all, like, I'm not going to let this opportunity get away by us not being mentally in the right spot, and I think, the bottom line is, and I will say it, and I think anybody will agree on our team, any of the best players, individual goals they mean maybe a lot and they're fun to have, but what we experience winning, you just really can't beat it. And I don't think those guys will admit the same thing. The feeling we had in the room, celebrating the cup, we still have the cup. The last couple of days, we had a barbecue and just sitting on the table, those moments are beat any individual goal out there. And sometimes it takes maybe a chance to win. You have to win to maybe notice that, but that's the honest truth. So, no, it was special.
How much, like obviously you said you got a great team. It's a different team. You lost some guys, but obviously does that? Are you like again? It's a dumb question, but I'm sure you understand now the path and the journey to get to that point. But it's got to fire you guys up to say let's run this back.
I think it definitely makes you slow down a bit. I think now you see how long it takes and how hard it takes to win. So, do we need to come out of the gates and be torching the league on fire? Probably not. I think we approach this season as a ramp. I think we ramp it up and our team is our D are the best in the league. I really stand by that. They're just a phenomenal D core that make it really tough for teams to play against. And but for our team, I think we just got to be very, kind of focus on ourselves, really. Like, I think there's going to be moments when it doesn't go well. We might go in a little stretch here and there, but I think our experience now, we know where we got to go to and how long it's going to take and how hard it's going to be. So, just kind of ramp up towards that.
So I want to get to you because obviously 15 years in the league and whatnot. In terms of leadership, and you've articulated the idea that anybody can be a leader, both whether verbally on the ice in terms of how you play. How would you describe that for you? Like, what's leadership look like to you? Whether it be from a coach or you see like a Joe Sakic as the GM, and like in general for you, what is leadership? And how does that manifest itself in let's say the NHL game?
Yeah, I think selfless. I think there's no hiding in especially in the NHL. I think who the leaders are. I think who the guys that are really selfless, people are, and I look at those. I think those are the ultimate leaders. I look at, you know, he probably, he's tough on himself, but I play with Jamie Benn in Dallas, and in terms of his play as a player, yeah, I think obviously it's maybe gone down a little bit in terms of what he used to be as a player, but when you look at it as a leader, I think he's probably the best I've seen. Even Landeskog on our team, I think there's a level of really they don't really care how they're doing as long as the team wins. And I think that is, and it's tough to do. It really is tough to do. I think there might be dark moments by yourself. There might be dark moments behind the scenes, but the real true leaders that I've seen, they never show it, no matter what. And those are the guys that you respect, and those are the guys that I would want to go to battle with. And like I said, I've seen Ben do that. I think Landeskog is the exact same way. They don't change, and unless the team wins, their attitudes don't change, and that means whatever their individual goals are or personal, whatever they're doing personally, and really it's on the back burner compared to team success. So and that's tough in the NHL. It's tough to do because it's a results. It's a business really, but those guys are two guys I've seen really live that.
How in terms of that? Because you talk about Gabe. I know in junior when he played for the Kitchener Rangers, Steve Spott, who's a good friend of mine, was his coach. And Spotter always said, even then, he said, this guy will be a captain in the NHL. So he kind of had this leadership kind of quality back even when he was, at the OHL level. In your mind, is that kind of leadership kind of like, can one develop that over time? Can one, or is it something that you believe it to be innate from the beginning?
I think you could develop it over time. I think when you really understand how important winning is, and really, the smart guys that realize that when the team wins, everybody looks good, really. The guys that can't figure that out are the guys that lose a lot, And I think, any winning team I've been on, everyone looks good. Everyone's praised at certain times. Everyone's doing somewhat of a good job, and the guys that maybe aren't even doing a good job get looked over because you're on a winning team. So the players that figure that out quicker are usually guys that play on winning teams and have success. And that's if you're on one of the best players or on the fourth line. It doesn't matter. At some point when you win, they still look at you that you're doing a good job. So the guys that figure that out quicker are usually the guys that get a little bit of both.
Right.
Yeah, I love that, and I think it's articulated so well. I want to shift gears a little bit and just prime how important is the mental game and players' mindsets and development, and especially as a leader and being in the NHL level. How much are you talking with other guys one on one? How much do you feel like that's impacting the players? Last year in Colorado, in your experience so far in the NHL.
Yeah, I think the mental game is. I think it's vital for success. I would look at it. I think it's about 60-40, even 70-30. I even looked at myself this playoffs, and I just think about my mindset going into this playoffs, and I was just rock solid mentally. Really, I went into a world a focus that I've never kind of experienced before, and that included, just being in the moment, staying away from news and kind of staying away from conversations. And, no matter if it was a win or loss, I approached the game a certain way, and I went and did the same thing over and over again. And to be honest, I think for myself, I think I found now a recipe that works for me, that makes me play at a high level, but also I noticed the team had success too. So I think it's, I went through the finals. I don't even think I answered anybody on a text message, to be honest, for 2 weeks. But, that was my way of saying, I'm going to be here. I'm going to be in the moment. And it worked for me. Even the last game, I didn't even look at the clock until 2 minutes left. But I think there's a level of mental edge that if you find, I think it really helps in the NHL because it's just a tough league.
How, in terms of that, I think that's such a key aspect in terms of an example that, younger guys in the league can probably, they can pay heed to. How hard is it for younger guys to understand that, or do some younger guys understand it more now than ever? Or what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think they're starting to get there. I think I think when guys start to look into that more and explore that, I think they reach and they get enlightened a bit. To be honest, I think they start thinking, "Wow, this really helps." I know some people that I've put on to people I've used, and they let me know that it was the best thing they've ever done. Sometimes you just need someone to talk to. You need a plan. You need to know how to react and figure out situations that come, and sometimes you just don't know how to do that personally, but I think it's 70-30. I really do 60-40 at least. The mental side of it, it's just such a grind of a game that you need to be on top of it.
Yeah, I think that's cool. So I think it's funny. I want to be able to talk about that part of it, but then the idea that in such a short period of time in Colorado from the trade, this impact you make in the room, and obviously we've talked about that, enough here, but I just think it's captured in that one picture, the picture of you hoisting the Stanley Cup, and the images of your teammates looking at you, and that excitement and happiness and joy they had for you. Maybe that's coming on the heels of that conversation you had with the team after Game 5. Maybe it's the fact that every player talking to Elliot Friedman was saying they're the happiest for you. At some point, what does that mean to you, Cogs, as a player, as a veteran? I keep thinking 1,100 games, 15 years. What does that mean beyond? You win the Stanley Cup, awesome. That's it. But then to have your teammates kind of have that kind of excitement, admiration, joy, respect of you.
Yeah, no, it means everything. Really, I think that's what the playing is about. I think that's what the game is about. And for me, I've always been a guy that as long as, I really don't care what people think in terms of media and what their opinion of me as a player. I just don't care. I think when I was younger, maybe I did much more than I ever have with the last couple of years. But I'm at a point now where as long as I have the respect of my teammates, that's all that matters to me, and I think it's that simple. And no, I think that moment, that picture for me is, the pinnacle of hockey, to be honest. And, it's a moment I'll never forget. And I think for myself, individual, I emptied the tank in playoffs. I really did. And I think guys saw that. I think, as a competitor and as an athlete, I think guys saw that, I broke my rib the first game. I kept playing. I broke my finger. I had surgery. I came back. I was getting shot up before every game and, hands bleeding. And I think over time, guys could see that I just wasn't going to quit. And, I think that's why the respect was where it was.
As I said, you've just helped teams win. You've done it at every level, so it's pretty impressive, right? It's not just something that you just found right now. You've been doing it since you were 16, 17 years old, so it's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So now you got. Oh, sorry, Cass, go ahead. Go.
Yeah, I got one last question. I think I'd be curious. You'd be mindful of your time. What would be your message? There kind of probably two messages here. One for athletes rising up, but also, we do a lot of this podcast for coaches. And so it's like a player's perspective on what is important for coaches to value in the new era of coaching and creating teams and cohesion and all those human skills side of coaching. Just I'd be curious on your take on both those, one for coaches and maybe a message for players as well.
Yeah. I think for me, if I was, a coach and looking at and evaluating people and players, and I'd firstly, evaluate on a work ethic. I think, that's non-negotiable for me. I think everyone has different talents. I think everyone, has different things that they bring to the table that are better than others. But, work ethic for me is I think speaks to who you are and what you're about and how hard you're going to push and I think when I've seen guys at work, I think usually good things happen to them. So if I was a coach or a manager or critiquing people, that's first and foremost what I would go off of and I think at the end of the day, I think you got to look at and see how guys problem solve. Really, and see what happens when the moments. I really watch players when things aren't going well to see what they do, and I think it gives you a very good understanding of what you have. And I think sometimes the room gets separated in the NHL. I think sometimes you see guys go on their own page and point fingers and blame guys, and then you have others that work harder and find solutions. So. And as a player, at the end of the day, I think hockey and I think playing in the NHL and playing at a high level, it takes commitment, it takes sacrifice, and and less talk is better. Really, it's more about what you're going to put into it and how hard you're going to work at certain things that need to be done and exhaust all options. And really, if you're a player, and I've always been a big believer that. I've never kind of let anything go by chance. I've always been a guy that's I'm going to, exhaust all angles. And then if it didn't work out, well, then I tried everything I could, really. So as a player and as a competitor, that's, I think, first and foremost what you need to do.
Love it. Yeah, I'll let you wrap up, Chris.
Yeah, no, Cogs, I appreciate that. I appreciate your time. And I think obviously that kind of leads into, I know you signed in the off season. Obviously, you're back to Colorado. But if we had to forecast 5 years, 10 years down the line, what's Andrew Cogliano doing?
Yeah, I don't know. You know what I think? We'll see. I think last year, when I was in San Jose, I thought, you start having different thoughts and you start planning and maybe thinking about other situations, but. I came in last year. I had a great year to finish the year. Obviously, won the cup, and now I'm going to take a year to year playing wise. But I think for me, I don't know if coaching is in the cards. I think coaching. I think it's the same grind as a player. I think I have a mind that thinks more in terms of managing people and managing things and trying to put pieces together to hopefully have success. So, maybe management in the future would be an option and being a part of a team. And, I've made good connections with people in terms of friendships and guys working on teams already. So, in a perfect world, you work with some people you like and some friends and, you have a good time and when you're not playing hockey.
So you're staying in the game, in other words. So that's what I like.
Unless I move to California and you won't see me again. I'll be on the beach.
Nice. Well, I think that's great. Good for you. Good for you. Well, listen, thanks, Cogs. Appreciate your time. I know you're in the middle of training camp and whatnot, so certainly wishing you the best personally this year, but obviously as a team, hopefully you guys are, well poised to run it back, and best of luck to you guys, as you approach the season this year, and we'll talk and connect down the line. So thanks again.
All right, guys. Thanks very much.